Folks, if we can do this in Delaware, I believe it's possible in Washington. But frankly, that just hasn't happened. 2 years ago, we came together as a state and a nation to vote for change, electing President Barack Obama and Delaware's own Vice President Joe Biden. And as they have worked hard to craft positive change, they have faced a Washington mired in partisanship and too often married to the status quo. Delawareans expect our elected officials to work together, to find solutions, to break through partisan gridlock. But today, unfortunately, we have a congressman who too often says one thing at home in Delaware and does another thing in Washington. That starts really in too often following the dictates of the congressional Republican leadership, folks who've put partisanship before purpose, valuing opposition to our president over working together to solve our nation's toughest problems. As you just heard from one of our senators, earlier this month, more than 4,000 Delawareans lost their unemployment benefits when Republicans in Congress played politics and used procedural gimmicks to hold up legislation critically needed to make a real difference for Delaware families who are struggling to keep a roof over their heads and meals on the table. Congressional Republicans for too long have played the politics of no. No on health care, no on the economic recovery, no even on tax breaks to give incentives for small business to hire unemployed workers. And sadly, our congressman has stood with his party and his leaders and voted no. Frankly, Congressman Castle and I come from different places in our view of how we got into this great recession and how we will get back out of it. And that leaves you with a clear choice to make in this election and for the future for Delaware. Over the past 2 years, we've experienced numerous body blows to our state's economy. We've seen both auto plants and a refinery close. We've seen dozens of companies, large and small, across our state lay off people, and all of us know a family member, a friend who's been directly affected by this. A few months ago, a friend of mine, Kelly Tomchek, who works with me in Newcastle County, was walking down the hall. We were both headed for lunch. And I saw in how she walked that things weren't good. She's usually one of the most positive people I know. And I stopped and pulled Kelly aside and asked what was wrong and if there was anything I could do. And after hesitating, she shared with me that a few months earlier, her husband, an electrician, a member of Local 313, had been laid off. And she and her husband and kids had struggled to make do. But earlier that day, she'd gotten the hard news that the Valero refinery, where both her brothers worked, had been shut down and they'd been thrown out of work. Kelly looked like she was struggling and could hardly keep moving as she worried whether she might lose her job because her employment, her health care, her salary was the only thing holding her family together. We've worked together in the last few months, Governor Markell and his administration and I and us in county government, to make for good news, to invest in partnership with our federal friends and allies in reopening the closed GM plant as Fisker Automotive, making alternative-powered plug-in hybrid cars, to invest in reopening the Valero refinery with new employees that will put people back to work. But even this good news is not enough to change the struggles of families like Kelly's and so many others are facing here in Delaware today. In the middle of this critical time, Delaware has come together. State and county, private sector, labor, we have found solutions and reopened plants and attracted new and growing businesses to Delaware. But 2 years ago, I remind you, we voted for change, to put that Delaware approach and those Delaware values to work in Washington, but we can't make real progress unless our president has a Congress able and willing to work with him. Where did I get these values? Where did this foundation come from? As a kid growing up in Hockessin, my parents and our neighbors taught me the values of hard work, of perseverance, and an admiration for volunteerism and public service. My brothers and I walked across a neighboring dairy farm to go to grade school. We borrowed books from the county bookmobile, and we watched as the town butcher ran across our little main street to the volunteer fire hall whenever the siren sounded. My dad worked hard running a small business, and my mom was a school teacher, but they both found time to reach out and help others. My dad volunteered and was active in prison ministry at Smyrna, and my mom joined others in our church in volunteering with the homeless at Emmanuel Dining Room. In fact, Mom just came back from Costa Rica, where she was pouring foundations for a church school. As a young man, as you heard, I put their values, our values, doing those same things around the country and around the world, working for the Coalition for the Homeless, working for the I Have a Dream Foundation, volunteering with the South African Council of Churches. And then I came home to Delaware, to this place I love and have made my home, to marry a woman, an amazing woman, who was and continues to be much too good for me. My son Jack is agreeing. I have to tell you that Annie's passion for service, Annie's passion for our community, Annie's passion for our family is what holds us together and sustains me year in and year out, and is the heart of our family and the heart of this campaign. So folks, could you give my wife Annie a round of applause? Annie and I are raising our 3 children here in Delaware, and like many other families, our lives are filled with their needs and their concerns, with sports, with homework, with church, with their friends. When I go to represent Delaware in the Senate, I may start traveling to Washington, but I will come home every night. Because there is no way I would take away from Michael, Jack, and Maggie that opportunity to learn the same values that I did growing up here in Delaware. One of those values is being optimistic, is believing that although things are tough now, they can and will be better. I got involved in government to make a difference, to tackle and clean up corruption, to bring back our government to serve our community, and to give Delawareans a government that reflects their values. In county government, that's meant losing parts to my speech. In county government, that's meant being a willing and able partner for Governor Markell, to work hard to attract new businesses to our community.